Good evening and welcome to the Monday, November 4th, West Fargo City Commission meeting. Before we start this evening, on behalf of the Commission, we'd like to welcome all the loved ones, friends, and family that are here to pay their respects to these two new officers that are being sworn in. I'll call the meeting to order, and Chief Nielsen, you and your honor staff, please take over.
Thank you. Can I get everybody to please stand? Honor guard, post colors. Over. March.
Chief, you and your officers, please lead us in the pledge.
Arms. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Please be seated. Good evening, Commission President Dardis and fellow commissioners. I want to take this time to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to bring two of our newest officers in front of you, have their family, their friends, fellow staff members join us in this evening of swearing in. We'll be swearing in two officers tonight, Officer Andrew Von Eschen and Officer Garrett Dixon. I'll read you a little bit of the bios for each of these officers. Police Officer Andrew Von Eschen grew up in Ortonville, Minnesota. He graduated from Ortonville High School in 2019. Von Eschen attended NDSU studying psychology in between military orders and family obligations. Prior to being hired by the West Fargo Police Department, Von Eschen worked full-time as a security forces and combat arms instructor at the North Dakota Air National Guard. He joined the Air National Guard back in 2020. Von Eschen graduated from the North Dakota Highway Patrol Law Enforcement Training Academy in May of 2024. When he's not working, Von Eschen enjoys spending time with his wife and daughter and occasionally getting to play a few video games. Police Officer Garrett Dixon grew up in San Antonio, Florida, and graduated from Pasco High School in 2014. Dixon joined the United States Army in 2015, where he was an infantryman in the 101st Airborne Division and then served as a recruiter in Fargo. Dixon joined the West Fargo Police Department in February 2024 and also attended the North Dakota Highway Patrol Law Enforcement Training Academy, graduating in May of 2024. And believe it or not, those two were both roommates at the Highway Patrol. So they see a lot of each other, and they work during the day shift. When he's not working, Garrett Dixon enjoys playing golf. I'll first bring up Officer Van Eschen, or both of them actually stand up, and I'll have to swear them in. Right up here. Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Garrett Dixon,
Having been duly appointed a police officer for the City of West Fargo,
a police officer for the City of West Fargo,
do solemnly swear
swear
that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States
I will uphold the Constitution of the United States
and the state of North Dakota.
and the state of North Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge and abilities,
to the best of my knowledge and abilities,
perform the duties of said office
perform the duties of said office
according to law,
according to law,
that I will constantly strive to achieve
that I will constantly strive to achieve
those objectives and ideals,
those objectives and ideals,
dedicating myself to my chosen profession
dedicating
myself to my chosen profession,
law enforcement.
law enforcement.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. All right. First, we'll bring up Andrew's wife, Jessica. Jessica will be officially pinning the badge on Andrew. Andrew, a couple words for the commission.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission, for the opportunity. I thank everyone in this room for all the support we've had throughout this process. I look forward to working for the city of West Fargo and serving its people. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And for Garrett, Garrett's sister Miranda, all the way from Florida, is here to pin the badge on Garrett. Congratulations.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you to all you guys and Chief Nielsen for the opportunity to work here. I look forward to a long career with the West Fargo Police Department, and I want to thank my family and all of my friends and supporters for being here tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. With that, I want to congratulate both officers for being officially sworn in, completing their field training program, and both of them are active members of our patrol unit right now, and both of them are serving on the day shift. So with that being said, I want to thank the commission for your time. And at this time, friends, family members of these officers, fellow staff members, we're going to join for a quick social in the training room. So if you want to follow these guys out towards the training room, again, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Jimmy. Bring him in for a quick picture. Get a quick picture with you guys and then we'll go over the other place.
Welcome. The happy ones, welcome. Sorry about that.
It's not broken. I didn't break it. I'm just trying different things to make sure it's good.
It's hard to make you look good, but.
You done?
Good, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Stay safe out there. Before we continue, I'd ask that everyone please silence your cell phones with the exception of our emergency personnel. Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Here.
Commissioner Zundell?
Here.
Commissioner Jordas?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been distributed and is in your packet, commissioners.
Make motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for Monday, November 4th, as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is to approve the minutes of October 21st, 2024. Again, they have been distributed and are in your packet.
Motion to approve?
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jorgensen seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of October 21st as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item G is the building permits. Again, the report is in your packets, commissioners.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve the building permits of November 4th, 2024. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits of November 4th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is a consent agenda. We have items A through J.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jorgensen seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. I would call to the attention to the public. Item D of the consent agenda are 2 additional snow emergency routes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are now in the regular agenda. First order is the public comment. Madam Secretary, has anybody signed up for public comment?
I do not have any.
Okay, we are now out, we close public comment. We move into item number 2. Item number 2 is an update on street parking. We're going to call on Mr. Matt Anvik, the Director of Public Works for the City of West Fargo. Good evening, Mr. Anvik, and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President, Commissioners. A few meetings back, there was some questions on street parking, and the Commission kind of wanted us to look into that. I met with Commissioner Zundell, and we discussed a few different options. Let me pull this up one second. At the time, we were kind of looking at a few different options. One is just kind of leaving the maintenance zones as is. Another option that we have is changing the enforcement on the maintenance zones that we have just from November 1st to April 15th, just to more or less accommodate the snow removal operation. We did look into street avenue parking. The Monday, park on the streets, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, avenues, say on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or such. Calendar parking was another option. Like you'd park on the side with the even houses on the even side of the days, like today would be, you'd be able to park on the even side of the street, and tomorrow would be the odd side. And then there's the possibility of just adjusting current maintenance zones and kind of split those into 2 days. All of these kind of have pros and cons to those. We can get into that, I guess, if you guys have some more questions on that, but we're really looking at it, and I thought I had put this in before, but Emily was nice enough to add this in right now. If you look on the screens, there's some of those areas in town where, if you look up here, that is really hard if we're going to do street and avenue parking or calendar parking type of thing. We have long blocks, and there's a lot of houses where they'd be moving quite some distance just to be able to park on an avenue or a street. And there's certain areas like this one here where with this diagonal parking with very little avenue, the street and avenue really wouldn't work very well. So I guess kind of looking at that, the cheapest option just to stay as is just to leave the maintenance zones as they are. It only affects the residents, 1 day a week for 9 hours. And that's during the daytime hours when you would expect probably about 75% of the people to, 60% of the people are either at work or at school. So it's probably the least invasive for that. It's also our most efficient way of snow removal and street sweeping. And the big con of that, and the disadvantage we have, and it's the question we get all the time, is where do I park? All right. Like on the maintenance zone, say like on this area here, there is no parking on this entire area for those 9 hours. So that is a valid concern of those residents. But when we looked at it prior, it would kind of balance that out between only one day or, having to move multiple days. Enforcing, if on the second option, just changing the enforcement on the maintenance zones from November 1st to April 15th. It's kind of the same as the one before. It's just be a little bit of a cost to it, probably around $10,000 to change to add that sign on the bottom. And then it would just, I'd change it a little bit for our street sweeping and make it a little bit more difficult for that. But the biggest complaint we get, or people see a lot easier, is just on the snow removal aspect of it. I did kind of touch on the street and avenue parking, where it'd be really hard and difficult in most areas of town to actually enforce that. The calendar parking, we did look at that, and it's going to be similar to, kind of the street and avenue parking, because it's not going to work on every area of town. It will work on some spots, but it also makes it a lot harder for the street sweeping. Then people are moving their cars every other day. Think if some people move their cars on the right side of the street and others forget, then it narrows that street down quite a bit. Make it a lot harder during the winter months. And then also we do have 72-hour parking in town, and those last two, the street and avenue and the calendar parking, would require ordinance changes to accommodate that. And kind of those are just kind of the breakdown, kind of pros and cons of some of them, and I'll just open up from questions and thoughts from the commission.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Zundell.
Did you ever look into, I know one of the things that we talked about was the concept of sending out like a message to various zones for when you were going to do actual maintenance? Similar to like Code Red, but for...
Yeah, we did talk about it, and I did drop the ball, and I did not look into that. I know we have in the past, a lot of times through social media and different boards, but I think, I know we did talk about that, and I didn't look into it, and I apologize. But I do believe we have that capability, and that would be something to look at going forward.
And then my other question is, in the dates that you were talking about as far as like street sweeping, if we looked at like the April 15th to November 1st, how many times did neighborhoods see their streets swept this summer? Like how many times did we make it in the areas with a street sweeper?
With that, I would say it's probably, we had one street sweeper that was down for probably about a month and a half this year with maintenance. So it was a little bit less than normal this year. But on average, it's probably at least every other week we do hit those. I would say probably every week next year or every other week. We'll have enough staff to be able to run 2 sweepers. Plus with the new sweeper that we're getting in the budget for 25, I would say it would be at least every other week at the latest, but more than likely every week.
Okay, those are my questions.
Another question? Okay. Anyone else? This is just an informational item. Any other questions? Anything else you have for us, Mr. Advik?
I guess direction on where you would like to go with this. If you'd like to see, if that's something that look at like that Code Red or a different kind of a software to be able to get out that messaging and what we have and bring that back. Or if we just kind of want to leave the maintenance zones as is right now. They are working really well for, especially when we have the street sweepers. We have Pro Sweep come in twice a year. Since we implemented the maintenance zones, they've got in and out of here in usually a week and a half, compared to previously it was 2 to 3 weeks, just because they had to keep going back in areas because of the amount of cars that were in there. They were just amazed. The first year we did this and ever since about how easily they can get in and get out of here at one time, which actually saves us quite a bit of money by doing that.
Commissioner Zundell.
Do any of you have any thought, if we continue to look at this at our next meeting, do any of you have any thoughts for guidance on any of these?
I'd ask one question, and this is Chief Nielsen. Could you give us by the next meeting, Chief, just an idea of how many citations are issued over these parking issues? Just in, it's obviously the citizens are concerned about it, but if we could just gather some data to see how many violations are we truly dealing with? Is it a large quantity or whatever? Would you help us with that, Chief?
Yes, sir. I can
Certainly.
provide that next week.
All right.
Yeah, well, when we first started this, I guess the biggest complaints we did get with maintenance zones were not ticketing cars, right? Like I think Chief Nielsen had said before, we kind of eased into it. We didn't ticket right away. And those first 2 years we were running the maintenance zones, that was our biggest complaint. People were calling, you have these zones up, ticket these people, they're in front of my house all the time. And then for about a year there, we really didn't receive anything. And then, I don't know, I suppose the last few months we've gotten a little bit uptick more complaints, and it's usually comes after somebody got a parking ticket or something. And then the biggest complaint we got in with the maintenance zones is where do I park, right? Where do I park during this time? Where can somebody, if they visit? And that's a valid concern. And I don't really, as is, we don't really have a good answer for that. The only thing is it's for about 9 hours one time a week instead of multiple days during the week, so.
Well, if it would warrant, when the chief is gathering that data, I'd like you and he to visit about these neighborhoods again, if you would, please.
Good.
Mr. Jorgensen.
I guess I see one big hurdle on some of these developments. It's all named streets.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between an avenue and a street? How are they gonna identify that in that certain areas?
Yeah.
I could see that being a real problem.
Yeah, that's kind of where we ran into. I know in the past when we looked at it, and we're looking at it again here, if you're going to the calendar parking or the street and avenue parking, it makes it real difficult, except for maybe a few areas in the core area of town.
Anything else additional, commissioners? All right, thank you, Mr. Enby.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is the flock safety system, a public safety operating system. We're going to call on Chief of Police Pete Nielsen, and the purpose of this discussion is to approve that this has been approved within the police department's 2025 budget, and the chief's going to give us an update.
Thank you.
Welcome, Chief.
Well, thank you, Commission President Dardis, fellow commissioners. Earlier this year, we put a proposal in and spoke to the flock camera system. We spoke to them in regards to what it would take to have them come to our city. We got some quotes. We had them actually come here, give us a presentation, and with that, we started looking at what the benefits this could be. And when we look at some of the benefits, this was approved in the 2025 Commission, and I'm trying to figure out how to move it. Oh, scroll. Okay. So I did have a PowerPoint for you here to see. And also, just so you should know, there's a flock representative online right now. Kristen McLeod from flock has been teamed in, and she is watching and can answer any questions if need be. So what the flock system is a camera system. It provides 24/7 coverage and real-time alerts. It utilizes the ALPR, which the ALPR is the automatic license plate recognition, the cameras on there on the actual poles to verify what the vehicles are. It's a database system that gathers objective evidence about vehicles, but not the people. What flock is not, it's not a facial recognition system. So all flock does is it captures the plate of those coming in and exiting the city. It's not a collection of sensitive information. It's not used to track any speed, any parking violations, and it's not it's not a information or a database, and what it does is it deletes at the end of a retention period. So we have it set up, or it would be set up to delete after 30 days. So we would be able to have those individuals who are traveling in and out of the city, the license plate, like I said, for 30 days. What Flock is, like I said, it's an ALPR. It recognizes the plates, it gathers objective evidence and information about the vehicles. It alerts law enforcement to wanted vehicles. It's a deterrent to criminal activity. So we have in the system, we had our intel unit look at some spots to come inside of the city and exit the city, and I'll get into some of those as we move along here. But this would, if we put these cameras out, we would put out approximately 30 cameras, and we would share these camera system, the database, with the city of Fargo, who has just also recently approved these, and we'd be able to communicate and talk with Fargo. Cass County is working on putting a few up in 25 as well, so they would have access to all of ours, so it's definitely a crime deterrent. Some of the privacy issues that you may get questioned on, one of those one of those would be the privacy, and there's no expectation of privacy of a license plate. We attached some case law to this presentation, and as you can see, there's no expectation of privacy on a license plate when you're on a public street. So people sometimes forget that there is no privacy on that. They're considered reliable evidence, and the technology is verifiable and acceptable, as you can see with some of the case law. And if there's any more regarding this case law that you'd like information on, we can definitely provide that. Our intel unit, along with Flock, has looked at some locations within the city of West Fargo, and these are the 30 places that we believe that we could benefit from having these cameras on. And these entry and exit points to the city would be very valuable and will be very valuable to a lot of different crimes and a lot of different missing people. So some of the data security, as you can see, the footage is owned by the police department, and it will never be sold to a private third party, so Flock will not sell that. And all the data is securely stored, and it's encrypted, and people are not able to get inside of this database. And you can see the 30-day retention is on there. After the 30 days, again, it gets deleted. Some of these cases that have been solved since the Fargo Police Department's installed the system, they have cleared a few very high-profile cases. Some of the major assaults, some of the homicides that have taken place, those have been solved with the Flock system, which has captured a license plate leaving a certain area, and it's allowed the investigation to continue. Some of the other different things that you can see on here is stolen vehicles, locate vehicles of wanted persons in violent crime, and it's also used as a locating tool for missing or vulnerable adults. And just a quick story, we had a vulnerable adult, an individual with dementia who had left his place of residence, and our officers swarmed into the area and then started spreading out, and we had no idea what timeline it was and where the individual with dementia was, but he had driven the vehicle, which he was not supposed to. We then, after Flock was installed in Fargo, we made one phone call over there, and the individual was located somewhere on South University, had no idea where he was. The officers were able to pull him over, stop him, and then get him back to his residence here in West Fargo, and which shows that we never would have probably found him without something major. In summary, what this concludes for us, this becomes a very big force multiplier for us. It's helped to find missing people, increases public safety, increases solvability, and it reduces the crime rates in West Fargo. I can tell you that some of our officers have been to some of the training and notified that one of the cities in the United States of Atlanta has pretty much their stolen vehicles have pretty much ended because they have Flock cameras everywhere, and if a person steals a car and they leave the area, the person that's monitoring the real-time crime center is able to tell the officers exactly where the car is pinged last. So their stolen vehicle rates have decreased like almost to the point of nothing at this point. So it's a very valuable tool, and it's something that I believe that the citizens of West Fargo would benefit greatly with. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
questions for the chief? Commissioner Jorgensen?
So the person watching this, is this gonna be somebody in Fargo, or is it a local center, or how does that?
Right now, we would have access into the database, so a supervisor or an officer would be able to log into the database and be able to look at where that vehicle is pinged, and then be able to relay that information out to the individuals that are maybe patrolling or whatever. But I know that Fargo right now, Fargo Police Department's working on a real-time crime center, so they would be able to have access to these cameras as well. Like I said, this is not facial recognition. The camera's directly at the license plate. It captures the license plate only.
So then if in event of a chase, if you lost the vehicle, they could watch and say it got pinged at another location and concentrate on that area.
Yep.
Good.
Commissioner Olson?
So, is there somebody actually watching all 30 cameras or so all the time? Or is it just, it's got enough technology that you type in, we're looking for license plate ABC 123, and it'll tell you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we could have somebody, like a supervisor, go into the system, pull up the system and see where that, real-time, where that vehicle's pinging or where the last known location of that vehicle would be throughout Fargo, West Fargo, and then a few out in the county.
Commissioner Zenzel?
Do we have ALPR readers on our squads right now?
We do not.
Will this tie in with whatever we have for ALPRs, or would they operate on two completely different?
That's a good question, but they would probably operate on two different systems, but the ones that we have now are not. They're extremely old, and we're very far behind on some of our technology.
Sure.
And this would bring us right into the forefront.
Sure. And then it just takes a picture of the license plate, so it doesn't capture any part of the vehicle?
It captures partial of the vehicle, but it won't, like I said, it doesn't capture anything inside the vehicle. So there's some, some success stories from actually the city of Fargo that has just put these on, and they have captured, like you could say, like a red truck, right? And it would show the red truck, but it would concentrate mainly on the license plate.
And then if it has like dealer plates or no plates, it just, nothing?
It would be a red
just
pickup
like
truck, right?
But you could pull up, like, let's say if they didn't have plates, could you pull up the time of day, pull it up, and you could see like a vehicle passing through? So it's video, or is it just glimpses of license plates?
Just the picture.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for the chief? All right, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Jorgensen.
When would you like this to be active, or what are you thinking for a timeline to initiate this?
Well, I'd like to initiate this as soon as possible. What Flock has agreed to do is if we went with a trial basis towards the end of the year, that would allow them the opportunity to start placing some of these cameras on, and then we would go live in January.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 4, A24-27, a zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV regarding lot coverage. Call on Mr. Aaron Nelson, Director of Planning, City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner Dardis. Okay, sorry. And Commissioners, give me a moment while I pull this up. All right. So item 4 is a zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV zoning regulations relating to maximum lot coverage in residential districts. This amendment, if approved, would increase the maximum lot coverage of buildings by 5% in most residential districts. The draft ordinance was presented to the Commission for first reading of the ordinance at the last meeting on October 21, and at which time the public hearing was held. Since that time, staff has been made aware of a set of comments received by commissioners, and to address one of the concerns that was raised, staff is actually proposing to make one change to the draft ordinance that was presented last time, specifically in relation to the definition of lot coverage. So there was some degree of confusion, I think, between the terminology used for lot coverage and impervious surface coverage. So tonight, I did want to make sure that it's clear that, just want to reiterate or confirm that the draft ordinance language would only increase the lot coverage and would have no effect on the overall impervious surface coverage maximums. Those are two different requirements in the ordinance today. So the definition of lot coverage has been revised slightly. You can see the strikeout in the packet here in front of you, basically removing any references to parking areas, so as to make it more clear that lot coverage is specific to buildings and impervious surface area is specific to basically everything inclusive of buildings and any other impervious surface. So with that change to the definition of lot coverage, nothing else in the proposed amendment has been modified or changed. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for staff. Otherwise, the requested action tonight is to approve the second reading of the ordinance.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Zundell?
Can you remind me why the individual who brought this forward just did not seek a variance? Because I think that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with, or maybe some of the comments, because it seems like this came out from one individual, and then I know when I watched planning and zoning, it was, you know, kind of presented that the commission asked you guys to present that to them, and this obviously didn't come from any of our direction. So I'm curious as to why that, like, a variance just didn't cover it, or how many people are seeking changes to this, or this would affect.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. I can certainly speak to that. So I think the to your first question about the individual that made this request, this was a citizen of West Fargo. He's acquired a new lot in town. He's looking to build a new house, and the plan set that he had submitted to the city included I think a back patio with maybe a pergola or something over the top of it. Fast forward to that building permit was approved. Fast forward to construction. I think upon inspection, it was found that they were planning to modify what they had submitted in order to basically put a roof over the top of the porch area. And so with that change, adding roofed coverage to that porch kicked it beyond the 30% maximum building coverage. And so the individual was told they can't proceed with the construction. They've got to take it down and revert back to that pergola or do something different in order to stay under that 30% maximum building coverage. Staff within both the building inspections and planning divisions had multiple conversations with the individual, letting them know that you either have to build it within the 30% maximum, or you can apply for a variance. You can apply for a variance, however, it's not likely that a variance would be supported by staff because it does require a showing of some type of a unique hardship to your property in order for something like that to be approved and supported by staff. But it's certainly well within your right to apply for a variance. That individual wanted to know what all alternative options were, and so staff did say, the only other option available to you would really be an amendment to the ordinance. An amendment to the ordinance can only be initiated by staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission, or the City Commission. Staff did say that's not something that staff is going to initiate, and so that individual did choose to take it upon himself to request to be on the City Commission agenda and made that request to the City Commission. Staff did tell the owner the same thing that I told you back in September, is that staff would be supportive of such a change if that's the direction the City Commission would like to go. Staff does see some benefit to the proposed change. Staff does not see it. I don't see it as a large, drastic change to the ordinance. More just loosening up some of the restrictions to allow a little bit more flexibility for existing lot owners, and also allowing for some additional flexibility for future development as the city grows. So that's kind of a summary, and I apologize if I missed some parts of your question there. I'm happy to circle back, but that's kind of the summary version of kind of how it got here today.
Mr. Nelson, is it not, other local jurisdictions, ours was more restrictive than other local jurisdictions, is that not correct?
Yeah, all jurisdictions are unique, but some of the jurisdictions that we looked at certainly did have regulations that were less restrictive than the city of West Fargo's. Namely the city of Fargo. They've got two primary residential zoning districts that have 35 and 40, I think, percent maximum building coverages, just as an example.
And am I not correct also that planning and zoning have had others that have bought lots in the community question the 30%?
Yeah, That's, yeah, something I was gonna mention too. Thank you for bringing that question up. It is, somewhat common for folks to bump up against that 30% requirement, especially home builders as they're looking to build. Mostly it is situations where they want to do some type of an extra patio or enclosed porch area. And so as a result, home builders are having to, revise their plans and resubmit their plans in order for staff to be able to approve them. I did ask some of our staff, just how often that does happen, and so just anecdotally, it's, roughly once a month or so, or maybe once every 20, building permit applications is where they're starting to bump up against that 30% maximum, just to give you a sense.
Anyone else? Any questions, commissioners? This is an actionable item. Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Jorgensen.
No, I met with the homeowner at this place, and his setback is 10 feet off his neighbor's property line, while his neighbor's property is 5 feet off. So, I mean, he's very open with the space, even though he overstepped his boundaries by 280-some square feet. So, I mean, he's landlocked by the streets on the east and the north. So, I mean, I think with us getting bigger as a town and bigger lots and bigger houses, I mean, that I can see the trend way allowing more square footage for building than what was, previously installed. So I'll make a motion to change the ordinance.
I have a motion to approve second reading of A 24-27, zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV regarding lot coverage. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve A 24-27, zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV regarding lot coverage. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Let the record show it's a 3-2 vote. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 5 is the Rivers Bend Multi-Use Path and Pedestrian Bridge. Mr. Dan Hansen, the city engineer. The purpose of the discussion is to create a project number 6060, approve a task order number 2.2 with HDAR for preliminary engineering services. Mr. Hansen, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. It was about a year ago that the Commission approved staff to submit for a TA grant for the construction of the multi-use path. This is on 23rd. If you pass Costco and you head west, basically the road ends near Enclave, and we submitted for a project that would install a multi-use path to connect that sidewalk and multi-use path over the river with a pedestrian bridge and connect that to Cheyenne Street. We were successful in getting that grant. Since then, we did go out for an RFP for engineering services, and the selection committee had a number of, I believe, 8 applicants for that. HDR engineering was selected as the preferred consultant for the project. And we did a scoping phase with them, which was an initial small scoping phase where we basically laid out, here's all the different things that we need to do with the project. We've identified a lot of the preliminary engineering that needs to be done. And the second phase of this engineering side of the project is to get a task order with HDR for these preliminary engineering services, and that is included in the packet. So with that, I would entertain any questions, and the recommendation would be to approve HDR's task order number 2-2.
Commissioners, do you have any questions, Mr. Hansen, on this? Commissioner Zundell moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. I have a motion to second to create project number 6060 and approve a task order 2.2 for HDR for preliminary engineering services. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is a Beaton Drive multi-use path improvements. Again, we call on Dan Hansen, city engineer. The purpose of the discussion is to approve a grant application for TA/CRP grant opportunities. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners again. This is, I believe it's been brought up in the past, but never formally as a project. I know over the last several years, at least since I've been here, it's been something that has been brought up by people that live in the neighborhood, businesses that are in the neighborhood, and what this is, and I'll just kind of jump down to an exhibit that we have, is on Beaton Drive between Cheyenne and over near Bobcat, where the sidewalk ends. There's a decent amount of pedestrian traffic in that location, and we've been contacted, like I said, by the business owners in the area as well as some residents, that it is just a dangerous situation with basically a small rural roadway that doesn't have pedestrian facilities for the pedestrians to be on that roadway. What we would be looking to do with this is, and what I'm looking for the commission to approve tonight would be to basically approve us to move forward with applying for grants to install this bike path. There are, as the Commissioner President noted, there are two different type of grants that we were able to apply for. The carbon reduction program, that's the one that we got the Rivers Bend multi-use path through. And then there's also the TA grants that we've also, if you recall, there's a sidewalk to the lights project connecting some parts to the lights that was constructed this year. That was utilizing TA grants. So we have been successful in the past in getting those grants. And so right now what we would be looking to do is going to MetroCog and putting this project into the hopper to see if we can't get it funded. I would imagine it would be several years out if we are successful in getting this funded. And but this is where it all starts, and that's where it started for those other bike path projects that we had as well. I did include in the packet one correspondence that we did receive recently as well, and the correspondence from that was the person that was asking for the bike path and multi-use path to get installed. They actually went to the DOT because this is a roadway that's on DOT right away for the most part. So they went to the DOT stating, hey, can you put a sidewalk in here? This is a dangerous situation, to which the DOT replied, that is up to the city of West Fargo to get a bike path installed there if there is to be one. I believe I did discuss with the DOT, I believe that we would have absolutely their blessing to go forth to submit for this grant program. But this, again, just starts the process. We have had some preliminary engineering done because we did need to answer the question, is there going to be room eventually when Beaton Drive gets reconstructed with the right-of-way that exists out there? Is there room to neck the bike path in towards the roadway, or would we need another pedestrian bridge to go over the river at that location? The preferred alternative would be to extend the box culverts out in that area and put the bike path on top of the box culverts as shown in the exhibit here. That would be approximately roughly the same price as putting in the pedestrian bridge, but a lot less maintenance in the future for the city and the park district with regards to that, not having to maintain a bridge. So with that, I would be looking for your approval for us to submit and apply for some grant programs to help pay for this project. And with that, I would entertain questions.
Mr. Henson, thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I think a lot of us that drive that road and the people that live there would like to see it tomorrow. Would like to see this happen tomorrow. Question I have on this is this kind of a final design, or is this kind of just a hypothetical?
This is just an option. Once we get into it, it would be different. This does show, well, there's a couple intricacies to this project. One of the things is that we can't install the bike path because we've got some utility work that needs to happen. These larger lots that are owned and eventually going to be developed, they're not sewered, they don't have water main, so we do need to get water main and sewer on that. The existing lift station that services this neighborhood is aged and in need of replacement, so the intent would be to install a new lift station that would be able to service this whole area as well as that residential neighborhood, and then there's currently an undersized, I believe, 2-inch force main that comes from basically that grinder pump station to the east to a manhole out front of Bobcat that we would need to oversize with a 4 or a 6-inch main. Once we get this funded, that gives us a date when this bike path will be built, which also gives us, I'd like to get those utilities installed 2 years prior, so that way we get all the utilities in, any potential settlement that happens in those trenches takes place, and then we can come back with the bike path project. But long answer to a short question, there is modifications that can still happen to it, but I believe this is a fairly decent run at what it might look like, but absolutely open for suggestions if you have some.
Thanks.
Additional questions from Mr. Hanson?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve to create the project number 6060. Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Zundell, second. And moved and seconded to approve to create a project number 6060 to approve a task order number 2.2 with HDR for preliminary engineering services. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that we're approving the grant application for the TRCRP grant opportunities.
My apologies. I'm off again. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll make sure I know what we're
Keep me
voting on
honest
here.
on this deal. We are approving a grant application for TA and CRP grant opportunities. My apologies. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
You're a busy boy. Item
Yep.
number 7, we're going to call again on Mr. Hanson, the city engineer. This is project 9036, I-94 and 26th Street West. This is a discussion regarding the Hazer property purchase update. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner, President Dardis, and Commissioners. If you recall, a little while back, August 7th of 2023, the Commission authorized staff and legal to enter into negotiations for a land acquisition for a future 26th Street West and I-94 interchange. Additionally, the potential purchase of the Hazer property was discussed at the Resolution of Necessity Public Hearing for Improvement District 1345, which is the Sandhills 6th edition, where the Commission also encouraged staff to negotiate a purchase of the Hazer property. If you do recall, Dan Hazer showed up representing both Hazer Ventures and his father's property, stating that the special assessments that were intended to be levied from that project on their property they'd be cost prohibitive. And it was, again, at that meeting that we were again encouraged to move forward with the negotiations. So I've had a number of negotiations with the Hazers. I have done some back and forth. We did hire an appraiser to go out and do an actual appraisal of the property, and those numbers are in the cover letter here. For the Hazer Ventures properties, that they own actually 2 properties out there that combine for a total of $715,000 in value according to those appraisals. The Dwayne Hazer property was independently appraised at an amount of $550,000. So through the negotiations, one of the things, just to summarize, both of the negotiations landed it with basically the same terms, if you've read through the cover sheet here, that basically we would propose purchasing those properties for a markup of basically 30% over the current appraised value. A couple of reasons for that. The number one reason for that is that if we were, the time value of what that property is going to be worth, if we were to wait until we are installing the interchange, and at that point, we were to come back and whether purchase or condemn the properties, that's likely going to be about 10 years out, if not a little further. The price of these properties would likely be close to double, especially after the Sandhills 6th edition has, by that time, fulfilled its obligations for what they're planning to do out there. So there will be a lot of business that will be out in that park, making that land also more valuable. It is right on 26th, so there is additional value with that as well. So that was where we landed with the negotiations for the purchase price. We would basically, obviously, if we're purchasing property, assume the special assessments that exist as well as the special assessments that would be levied against that property with the Sand Hills 6th edition. And then the other thing is that we would lease back to the Hazers for a period of not less than 5 years the ability to live there at a nominal dollar amount for them to be able to continue to use and occupy the property. Honestly, we don't need the property until the interchanges are happening. We had the 5 years is what we had brought up because I know for a fact we were not going to be building an interchange out there within the next 5 years. So that was fairly an easy one for me. The other thing is that we do have the right to, at that point, let the Hazers know, hey, we need you off the property within 1 year. Then the Hazers would have 1 year to move off the property. They would be able to move, sell, or whatever, anything that is structurally on the property, the existing homes, the structures that are there. Honestly, those structures are a burden to us because this is industrial property that even if it was going to be constructed in a business sense, those residential homes would be demolished and cost money to do. If we're installing an interchange, obviously we would be spending money to demolish those homes. And so if they say they were to sell and move the homes off the property, great for them, it's a good benefit for them, but it saves us money from having to demolish the homes on that property as well. So that would be basically where we landed as far as the terms of the negotiations that we've had. And with that, again, we just wanted to give you an update because we were directed to enter into negotiations with the Hazers. Wanted to give an update on where we landed, and if there isn't any opposition to this, my next step would be to work with Onstead Twitchell to get purchase agreements in place. And we would obviously bring those back in front of this commission for final approval before we would go and get signatures. And with that, I would entertain questions.
Mr. Zundell.
What happens if something happens to the houses before the 5 years? Let's say something terrible happens and there's no longer a house. Are we on the hook in this situation for a property? Or like if something breaks in the house because we own the house and they're just leasing it for a year, are we responsible for that? Or how are we working in language where, yes, we do own it, we're leasing it to you for $1, but I guess is there language in there that would comment on the fact like something structurally happens to the house, if there's a fire, if something needs to be added on, if they need a new water heater, if they, whatever?
I would defer that to legal or Dustin.
Yeah, we could certainly build language addressing those things into the lease that we propose back to them.
And I'll just add a little bit further. We do have a similar situation in a house that we had to acquire jointly, and now there is a lease in place with very extensive agreements that Onstead did draft. And addresses a lot of those types of things. What happens if a typical appliance goes out versus what happens if there's structural damage, so on and so forth. They are very extensive agreements, and like Dan said, we'll hand that over to Onstead.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner.
How do the Hazers feel about this agreement? Are they happy with it?
I feel they're happy with it.
They're happy with where we
I
are.
believe they are, yep.
I understand your explanation with regard to the 30% over the appraised value. I understand that the difference in time is money. I do have a problem with us assuming all the special assessments on this property for these improvements. How did that come into the negotiation that we would assume them and absolve them of all of the special assessments that this property had been assigned to, that they've enjoyed those improvements and benefited from?
What I would say is that in any purchase of real estate, whenever you purchase that land, you assume all the existing special assessments on the land, and there needs to be a disclosure to the purchasing people that there are intended specials, that they've been notified coming. Obviously, we were the ones that told the hazers that they're coming, so they don't have to notify us, but this is a standard operating procedure that a entity acquiring a property assumes the specials as well as any pending specials for improvements.
Any additional questions?
I guess I would also add that the funds that would be looking to be used towards this is the economic development sales tax funds.
This is an informational item only, correct?
Correct. This would be just, unless there's obvious, don't move forward with Onstead, my next step would be to initiate Onstead to put together the purchase agreement. We would provide that to the hazers, who would provide that to their attorney, make sure that the language is correct, and eventually, before we would enter into a purchase, we would bring that back.
Commissioners, anything additional? Any direction you want to give Mr. Hanson? All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Item number 8 is the City Administrator's Report. Call on Mr. Dustin Scott, City Administrator for the City of West Fargo. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. Really just a couple updates here, but I do want to start with a quick thank you. Thank you to the Commission. Thank you to our Assistant Police Chief, and thank you to our Chief of Police, Chief Nielsen, for moving forward with this flock system. Their exemplary leadership, another example of how they are keeping our community safe, and this is without question a revolutionary infrastructure for our community to be safe and for them to enhance their jobs. So again, thank you. Well, as Mr. Hanson just went over a lot of infrastructure projects, I've got another infrastructure project update for you, and it's kind of twofold. It's also a little bit of team recognition. And typically when we think of infrastructure projects, we're usually thinking about the great work that our public works staff or engineering staff are involved with. But this particular one is technology related. About 2 years ago, the Commission invested a lot of money for our IT department to go through and do a major overhaul of our internal IT infrastructure. Specifically, the Commission supported about $1.3 million of investment to do a massive overhaul of our core infrastructure for all city facilities. And some of those major components include replacing our servers, our network appliances, and adding a new disaster recovery site. So I'm happy to report that the project has been a huge success. Our IT department has been hard at work on these major improvements, along with trying to keep up with the day-to-days and quite frankly, building a whole new team. That entire department has only been here for 2 or less years. So it's a major feat to accomplish such massive projects with not only a brand new staff, but while keeping all of our day-to-day needs at the top of their priority as well. So, and over the next couple of years, they're going to continue to work on big enhancements, things like our cybersecurity, upgrading our phone systems and technology there, as well as improve some of the physical securities of our IT infrastructure. So again, part of that is a project update, but of course also a recognition of our IT department, and a big thank you for all of their efforts these past couple of years in getting that stuff done. While I might not have the detailed answers, I'm certainly willing to try my best with any questions you might have. Okay, and then last I have just a reminder that we are closed next Monday in observance of Veterans Day. So our City Hall offices and other facilities will be closed. Thank you.
Commissioners, you have anything for the City Administrator? Thank you. The correspondence, I think, has been distributed this evening to all the commissioners. Does anybody have individual correspondence you want to share? Do we have any non-agenda items that the commission would like to bring forward at this time? Commissioner Jorgensen.
So, been on the commission since July and sit on the liquor board along with Commissioner Anderson. And in 4 months, we've had to call 2 special meetings. Just,
That's it?
huh?
That's it? Thought it's been more than that. Anyway, keep going.
But anyway, I mean, the city incurs extra cost, you know, with the attorney, Emily's time, all that. So I was wondering if we put together a special meeting fee. I mean, granted, they were short meetings, but they, in some instances, they could turn into a longer one. And the last 2 were caused by their failure to do, the business failed to do the correspondence ahead of time. So, I mean, it costs time and money out of the city's pocket. I don't know what thoughts are on that, or,
You gentlemen sit on the liquor board. What type of cost do you think with attorney's fees and stuff that we did incur? I imagine it's an hourly rate, so.
right? And then Emily,
Special meeting, $250. What are you thinking?
I have no idea what,
Okay.
that's,
I think-
if all, I think there was 7 or 8 people, so granted, Robin and I are not hourly people. And I don't know if there's some hourly people on there, I mean, it's their cost too, but it's taking away time that they should be actually doing.
So was the issue because they were transferring it to a different location?
One was, one they moved, one they wanna do a employee happy hour deal, so they needed to move.
I think it's,
temporarily.
they've been short notice meetings because I think there might be some different versions of some applications that are out there. And so what I would ask is for staff to look into what kind of costs are associated with these meetings, such as attorney's fees, things like that, so we can get a gauge on what we should be charging for this, to recoup if we do special meetings. Otherwise, we kind of utilize this as a warning, saying, we're not doing any special meetings again, because you need to get your,
Shouldn't constitute an
Right.
emergency.
you need to get, yep.
Exactly right.
Commissioner Zundel.
What if you even just did the real-time cost of what it is? Because like you said, maybe some of the meetings go longer, so what if you do a real-time cost of the attorney was there for whatever we got the bill for, our hourly employees were there at whatever their overtime rate is outside, you know, what we would normally pay them, and give them a real-time cost plus 10%, or something like that. Because if it is variable, I would hate to pick a fee and then it turn into a 2-hour meeting instead of a 5-minute one. But I mean, yeah, I also think it's on the onus is on them. So I have zero problem with a fee for turning it into an emergency.
Okay. Mr. Scott, you're charged with the responsibility to determine that and report back to the commission with a recommendation of what we do. Commissioners, Jorgensen?
No.
Anderson, that meet with your approval?
Yeah,
All right,
extremely fair enough.
very good. And as far as the last comments by Commissioner Zundel, I agree with that. The real time. But probably a minimum. You know, obviously, we want to be responsive to the public as need be, but they need to follow the rules as well.
Absolutely understood. I certainly work with Katie and Onstead to evaluate those fees, and just to understand too that it's not just the participants at the meeting. You know, our police department have staff that have to go through and look at background checks, and there's a lot of other work that goes into it aside from just the special meeting. So, but like I said, I'd like to work with Katie and Onstead and Emily on developing some options for the commission to consider.
So with that, Sarah sat in on the last liquor board meeting, so she would be very versed on the conversations we had. Mr. Lee also brought up the same deal during the meeting.
Thank you, commissioners, for that input on that item. Does any of the other commissioners have any non-agenda items they'd like to bring forward at this time? Does any department head have anything that they'd like to bring forward as a non-agenda item this evening? Commissioner Jorgensen,
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Zundell. We stand adjourned.